Here's Jeff Paterson, the host of RinkWide Vancouver, was busy at it again last night, and our Canucks reporter. Jeff, how are you?
I'm good. It's heating up around the National Hockey League.
It is.
It's exciting times, obviously. A week out now from the draft and beyond that free agency, and we're starting to see teams sort of position themselves to make some hay, and some teams already making a little bit of hay. So love this time of year.
Yeah, Marchment from Dallas to Seattle for third and fourth round picks. That looked pretty good. I think I would have been okay with the Canucks doing that. What says you?
Well, I think the acquiring price, certainly. And look, Dallas can't take on anything with a contract in return, so it was a pure salary dump. I like Mason Marchment, but guys, I was flat out shocked. When I say he was 30 years old,
yeah,
I don't know.
Same,
in my mind,
yeah.
I would have said 25, 26. Totally forget that he spent a couple of years in Florida and broke into the league with Toronto. So maybe that's on me, but when I saw 30-year-old Mason Marchment. So a couple of things on him, terrific regular season, big body, brings some heft, but he has been a massive playoff disappointment. Not just this past year, but really 3 years where Dallas has been on these runs. And it's not just him. I tie Matt Duchene because he got his deal done in Dallas as well. You look at the Dallas Stars and you think they've got everything. They check off all the boxes. Okay, goaltending maybe was a bit of an issue for Pete DeBoer, but he's not there anymore. I still believe in Jake Ottinger. And then you look at their defense core and you look up front, they've got everything. They just have to figure out how those guys can get them over the hump in the playoffs. And that's been sort of the downfall there for the Dallas Stars, and Mason Marchment was part of that. Just an underwhelming playoff performance. So that's not to say that he can't go and help Seattle. I think he will. I think in the regular season, again, he brings elements that will help that hockey club. And for that acquiring price, yeah, I think the Vancouver Canucks probably should have been interested, and maybe they kicked some tires as well. Whatever the case, he's off to the Kraken, and the Canucks are going to see him in the regular season, but they're going to be facing him. So, no, I like that deal from Seattle's standpoint, but look, there aren't many perfect players in the National Hockey League, and certainly he's got his warts as well. But I was a little surprised when I was kind of like, and what else? What else did Seattle give up to get him? So for that price, I think that's a pretty solid move on the part of the Kraken.
I think there are more deals like that out there as teams maneuver. And again, we talked about this yesterday. It's not necessarily just the desperate teams like the Dallas Stars who are up against the cap. I think teams want to go shopping. They want to go on a shopping spree, and they want the most cap space available. And I think there are more deals like that out there, and it's up to the Canucks to find it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there were probably, I think we all wish there were a few more teams that were right up against it that would probably bring a little more drama in. Basically, everybody was given a 15%, prepaid Visa gift card essentially this year with the salary cap going up, and so that's a bit of a get out of jail free card for a lot of teams. I guess I always look at these deals and I do think okay, the Kraken wanted this player and they liked the price, but you are helping the Dallas Stars essentially get their house in order. Could they not have made Jim Nill sweat a little bit more here? A week before the draft, 10 days out from free agency. But I guess maybe if the Kraken thought that that's a player they wanted to get their hooks in, they better pounce on the opportunity when it was there. So, yeah, I mean, look, there were a lot of teams that are frustrated. The ones that didn't make the playoffs, the ones that flamed out early. And then you get other teams that didn't go as far as they wanted in the playoffs. Everybody's got their own objectives, and that's sort of what makes this time of year interesting as well, as they all jockey and try to get ahead of things and put themselves in shape to go spending. And yet this isn't necessarily a year where you're going to be able to go all in and solve your problems in free agency. It's a pretty thin pool, getting thinner by the minute, essentially. And, as all roads lead back to the Canucks on a program like this one, it does make you wonder now, is Pius Suter going to be able, forget a 4. Is there going to be a desperate team that goes completely sideways here on July 1st and throws the bank at him? Can he get something that started with a 5? Because there are just no centers available in free agency. So, great year to have the season that he did, and a platform year. Again, we've seen him. We know what he can do. We know some of the weaknesses in his game. But whether it's here or elsewhere, there is no doubt Pius Suter is going to get paid in 10 days' time.
Which begs the question, Jeff, should it be the Canucks paying him?
Well, not at a 5. Not at something that starts with a 5.
Okay, 4.5 by 4?
If they're going to improve, then it's not just about bringing Pius Suter and Brock Besser back. We know that you could bring those guys back, and then they still need to go and be creative, and that's the danger here. But if Pius Suter walks away, like, how do you try to improve down the middle? And now we're hearing these stories and reports that, maybe they're prepared to move forward with Philip Hedl as their second-line center. That would be pretty underwhelming, I think. And most people starting on day one of training camp would be holding their breath that this guy got through the first on-ice session at camp, and then, it's day by day with his injury history, even if he has a big offseason here that's allowed him to heal up and feel better about himself. So some real concerns there. I guess when I look at Pius Suter, I don't think of him as a 25-goal scorer. Even though he got there, good for him. Again, the timing was impeccable to be able to take himself to the open market. I still look at him as a 15 to maybe 20-goal scorer. I think last year is going to stand out as the outlier, but he brings an awful lot. We know that he's the defensive conscience on good lines. We know that he has performed in the playoffs. And we also know his role on this penalty kill that really became one of the strengths of the Vancouver Canucks. So in the absence of other better options in free agency, I do wonder if the Canucks are going to have to get a little uncomfortable here. And we know they did that with Dakota Joshua last year, that the asking price was a little richer than they wanted. But in the end, they wanted to get a deal done with the player. I haven't given up all hopes on the Canucks finding a way to bridge the gap here with Pius Suter. I still expect that Brock Besser is going to test free agency and will play somewhere else next season, but I think there is still a chance that the Canucks realize that, maybe a bit of an overpay, but that's a player that they want to hang on to in Pius Suter.
Yeah, it's potentially depressing for a Canucks fan, I think, to watch all this go down, isn't it? Because there is no easy solution, and you can imagine that the management group is cooking behind the scenes and probably coming to a pretty stark realization, too, that, they're going to have to be one of the few winners here in the trade market or free agency. That it's a big league. There's 31 other teams that are trying to do what you're doing. The chances of the Canucks pulling this off, Jeff, it doesn't look good. The chances are not good. I'm not saying they can't, but if you're just playing the odds, the chances are not good that they make the sufficient moves to make them demonstrably better for next season.
I ask you, how many rabbits can you fit in one of those magical top hats, right? Generally, I think one. I don't know how much room there is in the top hat, from the outside. Now, that's magic, right? That's the illusion. Maybe there's room for three. We'll find out on July 1st or 2nd. I'd like to see Patrick Allvin in the top hat, by the way, but that's another story here.
I think he'd wear it well.
But you're right. Look, the Edmonton Oilers aren't going anywhere. Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are going to be around. Despite what McDavid said the other day, he's going to be an Oiler. And that team has, they may not get back to the Stanley Cup final, but they're going to be good. And they're going to be a challenge in the division. The Vegas Golden Knights are just kind of lurking in the weeds right now. And yet there are a lot of people that think that's where Mitch Marner is ultimately going to wind up. Again, just the reality of the division you play in here. And so if the goal for the Vancouver Canucks is just to squeeze back into the playoffs, they could probably stick handle here through trades and free agency and make that happen. But the stated goal of this management group since it arrived in Vancouver was to build this into a championship contender. And that's where I'm with you, Blake, that just on the outside right now, it feels like they're going to have one of the all-time great off seasons to really take it from where they are to where they want to be. And can they accomplish that in one off season? It doesn't have to happen on July 1st and 2nd. Obviously, it can happen through the year. We saw them make substantial trades a year ago in season. But when you look at just the quality of prospects that they've got, and they do have prospects, and obviously their farm team's one win away from winning the Calder Cup. They've got some prospects, but in terms of, peddling those prospects to fix solutions right here, right now, you can probably do some of that, but it's not like this team is stocked with all of these tradable assets. So we know that the 15th overall, it might be part of a package, but on its own, it's not going to bring you what you need in the short term here. So, they've got some really heavy lifting to do over the next couple of weeks.
Jim Rutherford, at the end of season media availability, it will be expensive to get the top two center, but it will also be very expensive not to get one will be open to do whatever it takes.
Yeah, so
that's why this report from Drance, that you are already a week before the draft and a week and a half before free agency, turning inward and resigning yourself to maybe having to play Filipino at second line center. I'm not sure how Jim Rutherford explains that going forward.
I don't doubt Drance. I doubt the source, though. I don't think whatever the source is saying, they can't be accurate. There's no way they can actually expect to face the fans, Jeff, with Filipino as the solution.
Right. But I mean, it feels like maybe a softening of the blow a little bit, but ultimately, like, what is Filipino? He's at 45 points is his career high at this stage. And again, forget the points. It's his availability. And what if? What if he has more injury problems? Then what? And that's this idea that if he had started the year as a third line center, but you had been able to fill in above him, that if he gets hurt, at that point now, whether it's Teddy Bluger rising for a while, or Ratu, Max Sasson, you can fill that gap. But if you are, banking your plans on a guy who just hasn't been able to stay healthy and whose career at times has been called into question with these injuries, so many red flags. I've lost count already of how many red flags I see in that plan. So I hope that it is just talk at this point, and we'll see if the actions speak differently. But for me, that doesn't seem to jive with what Jim Rutherford said there. And essentially, he laid out that, at that point, and that was the end of the season availability, that they needed a second line center. I can't imagine that the thinking has changed, that their philosophy has changed that much so quickly. But let's see where things go. And again, if you had one of the guys down in Abbotsford that was just lighting it up and looked undeniable as an option, but that hasn't been the case. And so we'll see where things go. But I think they have to do better than Filipino as a second line center if they are going to get to the stated goals of being certainly a playoff team at the very least next season.
They do have that guy in Linus Karlsson who has been lighting it up. But is he an actual National Hockey League centerman? Probably not. He's probably a winger in their eyes. But let's segue to Abby, who get 2 goals from Jonathan Lekkerimaki. Again, not a center. But it's prompting us to ask if he's going to be a full-time National Hockey Leaguer next season. It's a big leap based on basically 1 game's worth, although he's a half point per game in the playoffs when he's seen action. That's not terrible for a rookie here, Jeff. What are your expectations here?
Yeah, I think I temper my expectations a little. I mean, it was terrific last night, and what a start to the hockey game, and for him to get back in the lineup and make that happen. Now, he got back in the lineup the other night and wasn't as prominent, but to get a goal a minute and 15 seconds in and just set that barn on fire, and that's been such a huge story through this, is the reaction of the home fans and the way that Abbotsford has played at home now, 10-2 on home ice in the playoffs, virtually unbeatable. They've won 5 in a row, and for Lekkerimaki to be a big part of it as sort of the tone setter was massive. I mean, this guy has a God-given ability to finish. The goals themselves, a lot of the other guys did a lot of the work, and that's part of Abbotsford's DNA, but you need somebody that can pull the trigger, and that's what Jonathan Lekkerimaki does. So he did it on both of his goals last night. Like to see it, both of his goals coming at 5-on-5, where we think of him maybe as just this power play merchant, or at least get him back in the lineup so that he could help Abbotsford on the power play. He had power play opportunities, but both of his goals came off the rush 5-on-5. So, a little sort of wrinkle to the way that we've seen him generate some of the offense at both the AHL and NHL levels. He's still a month away from his 21st birthday, so he is young. And this idea that he's going to step in and blow the Canucks away, I'm not sure I can get there. But there is every opportunity based on the lack of finishers, the need for offense, need for help on the power play. There's every opportunity. The path is very clear for him to be a full-time National Hockey Leaguer. But if people are thinking, okay, Brock Besser's going to skate away, this guy's going to come in and score 25 or 30 next year, that feels like a long shot. He still has to fill out physically. The other part about having these lengthy playoff runs, guys, we always talk about big summers in Vancouver. Well, the NHL offseason's half over, essentially, for, the guys that played for the big league team. There's going to be 2 months. There will be work put in, but this has been a lengthy playoff run that I'm sure has taken a physical toll on a lot of the guys in Abbotsford. they deserve a couple of weeks off at the very least just to, enjoy themselves when the season's done. So really, you're probably looking at about 6 to 8 weeks of an off season to put in the work. Can he, beef himself up to be an NHL physically to handle the rigors of the National Hockey League? That's going to remain the question for me. But I do see a path there absolutely for him, and I hope that a night like last night does a world of good for his confidence.
I do want to circle back on Rossi for a second. If 15th and a player isn't getting it done, Jeff, did they have to consider moving up the NHL roster to try and make that deal?
Well, we don't know who the player was, right? And so that's the great unknown in all of this. But this is also a negotiation a week out from the draft that, that's sort of the starting point, I would imagine, that if the Canucks really are hot and heavy on Marco Rossi, all right, the first foray didn't get it done. They know what Minnesota has told them. And so if the first player X wasn't enough, then yeah, maybe they have to climb the ladder a little higher. And, if you're the Canucks, I hope that you would have started with 15th and the plus would have been one of your lower level prospects, knowing deep down that you're willing to move. I mean, this is negotiation. So that's how I read the situation, that whatever they offered Minnesota wasn't enough to get the deal done now, but there is time here. There is still space. So this is one. I mean, there's just been so many reports linking the Canucks to Marco Rossi that I don't see this as a dead issue just because their initial attempt to get him didn't land the player.
We could see a trophy lifted in this community tomorrow. Jeff, a professional hockey trophy presented and lifted in the province of British Columbia.
So I was thinking to myself that somewhere in either the downtown offices of the Vancouver Canucks or out in Abbotsford, there is somebody whose job is to lay the groundwork for a championship parade. Mm-hmm. Now, you can't get way ahead of yourselves. I mean, that's the ultimate kiss of death, right? But these things don't spring up overnight. There is somebody that has given this an ounce of thought. There has never been a person. Well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, the Canucks have been to Game 7 in the Stanley Cup Final, so perhaps there were some plans in a drawer somewhere.
Probably.
But yeah, somebody out in Abbotsford right now is thinking about, all right, how are we going to ultimately celebrate? And now they've got to go and get it done on Saturday, but they have played so well in the 2 games at home. The 3-2 final flattered Charlotte. Even though Charlotte outshot the Canucks again, score effects in the third period, they had 16 of their shots in the third. I never felt that the Canucks were in danger last night. Artur Silovs just looked so locked in, making the big saves when he had to. Charlotte had 3 power plays in the first period and wasn't able to score. Now, they finally did score a power play goal, which deserves mention because it's the first time in 12 home games here in the playoffs that Abbotsford has surrendered a power play goal, which is just remarkable. And Silovs has been a huge part of that. Your goalie has to be one of your best penalty killers. But to get the start they did, they built on it when Arshdeep Bains went inside again, and then scored to make it 2-0. That brought the house down out in Abbotsford. Brilliant play, but also I thought really a turning point of that hockey game. It's 1-0 at that point, guys. Both of these goaltenders have been good, certainly early in the series, but in that moment, Charlotte needed a save. They absolutely had to have a save, and while Bains turned the defenseman inside out, he ultimately just flings the puck on net. It goes right through the wickets on Kaapo Kähkönen, and we've seen this throughout the playoffs, that Artur Silovs refuses to blink. The guy at the other end giving up a few too many goals, and the Canucks have had way better goaltending through the first 4 games. If you boil this down, the Canucks' best players have elevated and have performed and produced. Charlotte's best skaters haven't, and goaltending has one-sidedly been in the favor of the Abbotsford Canucks. So that's a pretty good combination. It's a good formula for success, and if they can apply it one more time, I think there's every reason to believe that they will be Calder Cup champs on Saturday night.
Pretty cool.
The Stanley Cup has been presented in 2 different Vancouver arenas. The Pacific Coliseum in 82 and then that one in 2011. The Patrick Arena in Victoria, the Stanley Cup was presented there in 1925. And the Vancouver Millionaires, despite playing in Cup finals, it sounds the Denman Arena saw the Stanley Cup presented in 1921. the Millionaires were in another Stanley Cup final, but it was played exclusively in Toronto. They used to do that back then, right?
Center of the universe from the get-go.
In one city. Well, it was only played here in 21, and then it was only played in Toronto in 22. Lastly, Jeff, you asked me how many rabbits fit into a top hat. The answer is it depends what kind of rabbit. But if you're looking at the Netherland dwarf rabbit, I'm thinking you can get a lot of rabbits in that hat. They're only about 8 inches. But if you're talking about the Flemish giant rabbit,
one maybe
28 inches.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like a small human.
Yeah.
And how odd.
That
the
doesn't
Netherlands
sound like
has the dwarf, and then right next door in Belgium, you have the giant rabbits.
Rivalry.
That is surprising because the Netherlands is the tallest population on the planet. So you would think they'd have the tallest bunnies as well.
They like small bunnies, though.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Little bunnies.
I
and
would
then
think a
the
28
Flemish.
inch, like with those ears, that's not for a magician. Like they would poke out the top of the hat, they'd give away the act, the whole bit. So I think you're looking at probably one of those smaller breeds. That would make sense to me, but I'm not a magician, and it's on Patrick Alvin to make some magic happen here over the next week or 10
order
days.
up a colony of Netherland dwarf rabbits, and we'll send it to Rogers Arena, and we'll be watching and listening RinkWide Vancouver Saturday after Game 5 of the Calder Cup Final.
Big week.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right, guys. Thanks.